My dad was one of the few members of the 8 children that didn't farm. He tried farming, but he didn't like it much. Didn't have much luck with it, and he was a salesman. He was an insurance for a while, an insurance agent. For quite a while, he was a Singer sewing machine agent, and then he bought a share in a John Deere farm machinery company, and so on. But I always wanted to live on a farm. I used to visit my cousins on their farms, and I used to feel like that was, such a wonderful life that they had. I learned to ride horses, there, and things like that I really didn't have available in my life. We had a huge garden. We might as well have had a farm. We had a cow, pigs, and chickens. We had about 2 acres of garden.
On the outskirts of Cardston.
On the outskirts of Cardston. I would say 90% of our food we grew ourselves. There were only a few things that we regularly bought at the grocery store, one of them being Miracle Whip, which was a tremendous treat, and we all loved it.
You still like it?
I still like it. And we had a root cellar that we'd fill with various vegetables, and Mom would bottle all kinds of stuff, pickles and various kinds of fruit. We had relatives in Creston, BC, and they used to make a trip there every fall and bring back a carload of apples and other fruit and store that in the cellar. And we'd have tomatoes ripening in boxes under our bed upstairs, and other vegetables in the cellar that would last for a good part of the year. I remember they used to get pretty lean along about April, because most of the fresh stuff was gone, and we were relying on bottled things for our vegetables. And but in the first thing we would plant, and this would be as early as even possible, we would plant onions and radishes and lettuce. And when those first radishes and onions got big enough to eat, we would make sandwiches out of them. By that point, scurvy was a real possibility.
Gee, we gotta stop. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah, well, it was, living that way where what you produce, what you grow and process in your own home means so much more. I suppose when you're young everything tastes better, but I don't think it's possible to quite duplicate the wholesomeness and the good taste of a lot of that stuff that we produced and processed.
What was your favorite food that your mom made?
Well, she used to make a green tomato jam. It had a lot of cinnamon in it, but it was absolutely delicious. We had a cow that gave us all the milk products. I guess one of our big treats was ice cream. We'd make we had a freezer that you turn, and as long as we had snow around, we would use that snow. And when that was gone, we would drive across the border into the United States, up on the Logan Pass in Glacier Park, until we found the first glacier up there. And then we would stop and dig out some of the glacier and make ice cream on the spot.
Just like the cave people used to
Yeah,
do.
it was like foraging. And that ice cream was so delicious, made with whole cream, our own cream, and fruit that Mom had bottled, and it was really wonderful.
I remember a lot of rhubarb at grandparents.
Rhubarb was important because it came so early in the year. It was the first fruit, that fresh fruit that we would have. It was a bit suspect because it used to grow where the outhouse used to be all the time. It seemed to really foster rhubarb. I don't like to think what that means about the contents of the rhubarb, but it certainly gave us some wonderful red fruit. And then when the strawberries came on, rhubarb and strawberry pie was one of the wonderful things that Mom used to make a lot.
And there was a big corn patch in the backyard.
We
It seemed
always
like a
had-
mile high when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
we always had a lot of corn. Southern Alberta, where we live, Cardston is hot enough to grow good corn. And cucumbers, we always had lots of cucumbers. And hot weather vegetables that are a little harder to grow up here where we live now, northwest of Edmonton. But
You were talking about music in
Oh.
your family.
well, music was very important in our family, and it's been very important in my life. When I finally left teaching at the university, I got involved in opera singing. I didn't know that I could make money at it, you know. And when I found out people would pay me to sing opera, I really got interested in opera. I was in San Diego taking a course in therapeutic massage, and I took some singing lessons while I was there, and I got a job singing at an Italian restaurant, Mario's Restaurant in San Diego, and this is a picture of one of the roles I played in an opera here in Edmonton. But I sang every night in Mario's Restaurant. They had 4 of us singing, a quartet basically. We all had to do a number of solos, and we did a number of group things and so on. And that really gave me a good grounding in opera. I learned more opera in the year I was there than I have since. Eventually, I worked for several years for Edmonton Opera and I did roles in other operas in Western Canada. And I met my wife on stage. She was also an opera singer. She came from Toronto to be in a Gilbert and Sullivan production that I was involved in. And we fell in love, and eventually we set up an opera touring company. We wrote and produced fairy tale operas for children, performed in schools. At our height, we had over 200 schools that we regularly toured at. Plus, we did light opera, Gilbert and Sullivan, and so on, and Broadway musicals. We toured again in Western Canada with a relatively small cast, but I made my living for 15 years singing opera.
I remember one of them was a feminist Rapunzel that you guys wrote.
Yes, that was maybe a bit of a mistake in terms of our reputation. Some of the teachers were a little bit offended. Rapunzel, the prince would say to Rapunzel, who was up on this platform, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel's reply was, "You've got to be kidding." which was, I thought was really funny, but some of the teachers didn't like the fact that we were dealing with such serious issues.
Are you okay reminiscing about your piano lessons as a kid?
Well, I did have a lot of lessons from my dad, who didn't really know how to teach piano very well, and he was very strict. I mean, I practiced faithfully because if I didn't know my lesson, I'd get a licking, and I wouldn't recommend that as a way to make people love music or develop their talents. But I did have some natural ability to play, and I eventually got through grade 10 piano conservatory the Toronto Conservatory of Music, and I still play the piano quite a bit.
You said that those strict lessons left a very ambivalent feeling in you towards
Well, yes, and as soon as I could, I stopped playing, and for a few years I didn't really play very much. Certainly, I didn't play the classical music. Dad wouldn't allow us to play popular stuff. It had to be the classics, and so of course I eventually reacted to that for a time. And I now have an incredible collection of old pop music that I go to once in a while. One of the roles, well, I got a chance to play a lot of wonderful roles that I probably never would have with our Alberta Opera Touring Association, which is my wife and my company, and I got to play opposite her. I played the wolf to her Little Red Riding Hood. I played the professor to her Liza. I got to say all kinds of sexist things in that play that I would never have dared say to my wife outside it. But of course, Liza makes him pay the price in the end. He falls in love with her finally. And so it was a very wonderful way to explore different sides of your nature, to try out different characters, find out who you might have been or who you could be if you wanted to. It was a wonderful 15 years. Eventually I got into municipal politics and stopped touring. I just still do a lot of singing, but mostly at funerals now, which is not so much fun, but nevertheless it seems to be something that I get a demand for, so